Gentlemen, and welcome to the Chicago Board of Elections regular board meeting of August 12th, 2020. If at any time during this call you need assistance, please press *0 for the operator. This call is being recorded. I would now like to turn the conference over to Commissioner William Kresse. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is Commissioner William Kresse. I will be chairing this afternoon's meeting, which is being held telephonically under rules and procedures adopted by this commission pursuant to executive orders issued by Governor Pritzker in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. That was our first, the meeting is called to order. Next item of business is the roll call. Chair Marisel Hernandez, are you here?
I'm here.
Commissioner Jonathan Swain, are you here?
I'm here.
All the commissioners are present. The next item is a consideration of the agenda, and I would like at the outset to say I would like to postpone item 7B, approval of a contract with the Hensley Company for vote-by-mail scanning and archival services. General Counsel Adam Lasker, do you wish to comment on that?
Well, I do appreciate that. We are not prepared to proceed with that matter today. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Accordingly, is there any further discussion on this matter? If not, is there any objection to the agenda as stated with the postponement of item 7B?
This is Commissioner Hernandez. No objection.
Commissioner Swain?
No objection.
There being no objections, we will go ahead with the meeting. The agenda is adopted. The next item is approval of minutes of the emergency board meeting of March 19, 2020. Is there, the chair entertains a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Commissioner Hernandez.
Second, Commissioner.
Is there a
Swain.
second?
Second.
The motion being moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Commissioner Hernandez votes aye.
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
Very good. The minutes are adopted. The next item is the Executive Director's report. I call upon Executive Director Lance Gough.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just to let everybody know, today is the countdown is 82 days and 10 hours before the election. The time is moving quickly. Just to let the board members know that we will be working weekends to try to get all the scanning. The mail is coming in hot and heavy. We're receiving applications for absentee and return mail for the canvas. So we'll be working weekends now. Next Saturday, the 22nd, we have a power shutdown. The building's going to shut the power down on the 6th and 8th floor. So that will be on the 22nd, Saturday. But that's the only Saturday I think we'll miss. Just some other items to let the board members know that we're still meeting with the Sheriff's Department to talk about voting out at 26 in California. We're still working on that. We're still working with Peter Peso, myself. We're still working with the city and county about the CARES Act to get that funding up and running. We are, Clint and I had met with the library board. He's meeting with the Board of Education so we can get our early voting sites up and running. As I don't know if the board members know, but the schools are doing their education remotely, and we may be able to have those schools for early voting, something that we're looking into it right now. And Clinton is heading that, and he's doing an excellent job. There are other things, but I'm sending a written memo to all the board members giving you a further update of where we're at. I'm going to have I'm open for questions, but I'd like for Charles Holliday to report on what materials that we have in the house like that needs to be scanned. give you some counts on the judges of election and other items.
Thank you, Executive Director Gough. Are you completed with your comments?
Yes, I am.
Then I will call upon Assistant Executive Director Charles Holliday. Mr. Holliday.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners. As of last night, the online application for high school student judges went live. Not much action with that just yet. So there's 3,140 election judges that have applied so far. 100 election judges have been assigned for party, languages, and college applications combined. The Judges Department is in constant communication with the committee chairpersons to make sure they make their assignments by their deadline of September 4th. After their deadline, the clerks will start assigning over-the-counter applications. There are 1,724 election coordinators that have responded yes to serving again in November, and there's additional 328 new election coordinators have applied so far. The registration department has in-house 2,000 registrations to process and online 333. The registration department have started scanning the return mail from the canvas, and that's moving along real well as the vote by mail department scanning the requests for applications to vote by mail. As of today, there's 217,000 vote by mail requests in our system. HR has started bringing in additional staff for registration department and for the vote by mail department to help with the increased work they have, and just attending the different meetings with Mr. Gough and managing and see that the remaining staff of the office are still forging forward with preparing for our November election. So ends my report.
Charles, this is Commissioner Swain. Is it possible to get a report on, say, a weekly basis of the vote by mail as a percentage of total registered voters by ward?
Yes, we can do that.
And I'd like to, if we could do it easily by day when we get our daily report, that'd be great. If not, then if we can get it by week, that'd be great.
Can we get the backlog done first before we give you those reports, though?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. That's fine.
All right, so we'll get those to you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Holliday? Hearing none, we move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the report from the Communications Director, Mr. Jim Allen. Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon. Since the last meeting, we had a meeting with committee persons from the Democratic Party where we fielded questions about the vote by mail systems and the safeguards, the early voting. We've also extended comparable willingness to speak with the Republican committee persons. We've had the bid for the second notice, the canvas, which doubled as the vote by mail application mailing. The first notice was non-forwardable. It was return service requested. So if that address was no longer valid or could not be delivered, those are the items that Lance referenced earlier as far as the return mail. And the second phase of that is the second notice, which does not include an application to vote by mail. And this one will be forwardable, and it has a business reply card for the person to reply if they've definitely changed their address either within the city or for us to cancel it if they've moved outside of the city. Next, we've been working on updates to various web pages, particularly in the other languages. The Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and Polish translators have been generating more and more information to post to the site. In coordination with the chair and with the executive director, we've been fielding, as well as Adam Lasker, our legal counsel, We've been fielding inquiries from various organizations, League of Women Voters, Clean Count Cook County, as well as various news media, asking questions about a variety of preparations for the upcoming election. Next, we're now in the process of preparing the next sets of forms and signage, including a new email and link for a form to help us provide more immediate service to voters if their vote by mail ballot signature on their envelope is either unsigned or if the signature does not match, so that we can work with the voter beyond the legally required mail notice more immediately by phone or by email. And that's it for now.
Any questions for Mr. Allen? Hearing none, we move on to old business. The first item, infrastructure projects and changes in election administration. Mr. Gough or Mr. Holliday, anything to report on that?
We're moving full speed ahead, but Charles has a report on the electronic poll book.
Okay, moving on to electronic poll books. Mr. Holliday.
Yes, by tomorrow, we'll be finished retrieving the log files from this past elections from the poll book, and they continue to prepare them for November.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Holliday? Hearing none, we move on to voting equipment. Mr. Gough or Mr. Holliday, any reports on that?
No, nothing to report on right now.
Okay, moving on to legislation. General Counsel Lasker, anything to report on that?
Well, similarly, the legislature has been out of session, so I have nothing to report on legislation.
Very good. We move on now to new business. Item A, a bid award and contract approval with Productivity Government Services, Inc., a staffing division of Robert Half Government, for temporary staffing support for the November 2020 general election. Normally at this time, we would call upon our procurement officer, Opal Walls. Sadly, she had a death in her family and cannot be with us today. I'm sure my fellow commissioners join me in extending condolences to Opal and her family. In lieu of having Procurement Officer Walls with us, I call upon General Counsel Lasker to tell us a little bit about this proposed contract.
Thank you, Commissioner Kresse. In late 2019, the board did execute two contracts with two different agencies for temporary staffing services. Those contracts were for both the March primary election and the November general election. However, after the March primary was completed, we found out that one of those two agencies, they informed us they are going out of business. And so we were in need of a second temporary staffing agency. Ms. Walls did perform a sort of an emergency small bid procedures. They're following the normal time frame. We wouldn't have been able to have a contract in place yet, and we need those people to start working. So she did receive several bids. Productivity Government Services, which is a division of Robert Half, was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And so with their pricing, we are here today to request that you approve a contract that would have a term to begin August 5th and expire December 31st of this year in an amount not to exceed $2,500,000. And the contract that is being proposed is also one that's been, it has been fully bid by other governments, both in Illinois and in the region, if not across the country. They've informed us that the state of Michigan, Ohio, and even a division of the state of Illinois are operating under this similar contract now. So the terms are good, and we do request your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Lasker. Any discussion amongst the commissioners? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion. to approve a contract between the board and Fortivity Government Services, Inc. for temporary staffing at the board's offices and warehouse for the November 2020 general election, with a term beginning August 5, 2020 and expiring on December 31, 2020, and with total compensation not to exceed $2,500,000.
So moved.
Is there a motion?
Swain. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second
Thank you,
by
Commissioner.
Commissioner Hernandez.
There being a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
Marisel Hernandez says aye.
In the opinion of the chair, the motion is passed. We move on now to, again, item 7B was postponed to a future meeting. Item 8 on the agenda, the legal report. Again, I call upon legal counsel, general counsel, Adam Lasker.
Thank you, Commissioner. For the legal report today, we were just served today with a lawsuit by the Cook County Republican Party, which is challenging the vote by mail statutes for this November's election. And so I will be reviewing that and reporting back to the board. My first look, it appears as though there are no allegations levied directly against the board, nor is there any relief sought against the board. The State Board of Elections and Governor Pritzker are named defendants. The Cook County Clerk's Office, Ms. Clerk Yarbrough, and the commissioners here of our board are the only defendants out of the 107 election authorities throughout the state. So that's a little curious as to why they chose the two of us. But nonetheless, I'll report back to you individually with details, and we'll send out copies of the complaint that we just were served with today. Other than that, we are continuing to move forward with the Department of Justice on our accessibility projects and monitoring all of our compliance with the new laws for this November. Of course, we will be moving forward under those laws unless until any court rules otherwise. So that's my report for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners for General Counsel Lasker? Hearing none, we move on to our next item, which is public comment. I remind all of those who wish to speak under the rules of the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners during public comment. Your time is limited to 5 minutes, and I will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining on your time. I have in front of me a list of the individuals who are online who have requested to make public comment, so I will go down the list in accordance to apparently the time at which you signed on to the call. So I will start with Helene Gabelnick of the League of Women Voters. Are you there, Ms. Gabelnick?
Yes, I am.
Very well. You wish to make
okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
If you wish to make public comment, please begin.
Okay. League recognizes and commends the hard work of the board and its staff to provide the voters of Chicago with a safe and secure election under the highly unusual conditions we all face. We're looking forward to a smoothly run election with high voter turnout. In view of the large numbers, 217,000 just recorded, of vote-by-mail applications, we recognize that you will be developing procedures to recruit and change election judges who will check and verify these ballots. Please let us know when these procedures are finalized so we can alert our members, many of whom have already expressed an interest in participating. Please also let us know whether any ballot verification will be done by electronic means. We have been receiving inquiries about the ballot tracking procedures, where will the tracking codes be located, and how they can be used to determine the status of the ballot. This information should be clearly presented on the website. The board has stated that there will be news conferences, public service announcements, and press releases to address many of the concerns potential voters have about vote by mail. Urge voters to use vote by mail, to vote early, and to apply to be poll workers and election judges. Please let us know when you schedule press conferences so we can alert our members and thereby assist you in disseminating information, finding volunteers to serve as election judges, and help to get out the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabelnick. I next will call upon the next person on the list in front of me, which is Claire Tobin of Illinois Integrity. Are you there, Claire Tobin?
Oh, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Begin when you're ready.
Okay, great. I think I asked this question previously, but maybe I can send it in an email and Mr. Allen can put me on the list to be responded to. But we wanted clarification on whether all of the ballots that are mail-in ballots, the signature is going to be checked on the application for a ballot, or only when it comes back, with the actual ballot. And the other item that we think is very important is clear instructions about filling in the ovals on the ballot, so they're not marked with an X or a check mark. They have to be completely filled in. So I just needed assurance that was going to be considered. And then it seems like the other information that we had gotten from Clean Count, that the early voting sites are going to have the drop boxes inside the early voting sites. So that probably means that you can only drop it off during the times when the early voting sites are open, which I think normally is only from 9 to 5, but I'm not sure about that. So we would recommend that they be open from 11 to 7, so that the extra 2 hours in the evening, people who are working would also be able to drop off their ballots securely. I think those were all the items that were on the list. And thank you for all the hard work again.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like me,
Thank you, Ms. Tobin.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to address some of those questions.
No, I think Ms. Tobin indicated that she was going to be sending you an email, so you can get back to her on that.
All right.
Okay? Oh, very good. The next on my list is, let's see, Joyce Good. Now, Joyce, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Are you affiliated with any organization?
Well, I'm working with some voter organizations, but I'm calling actually, on my own.
Okay, very good. Very good, Ms. Good. Then begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and everyone, and thank you so much. My question is just a verification of something that was asked before. It was asked, will there be any security for the drop boxes? And my idea of a drop box is just a box with a slit in it, and it doesn't have any counter or any kind of electronic function. So my concern is, when you have something like that, before the polls open, will it be easy to put ballots inside of it? And when the polls close, what happens when these ballots are packed up and taken to the warehouse? Who will be observing what is going on? And so I would like I would actually really appreciate some confirmation today if you have any idea of how to resolve that. And my last question is, you have your answer to the other question was, we will have a board employee time stamp the ballot envelope and be there to look at what's going on. So if this is supposedly the security, if this takes place, you have a statement on your website that says, if a ballot envelope is placed in a mailbox on or near Election Day, that envelope may be postmarked late and will not be eligible to be counted. With a stamp person right there, does that eliminate that rule? Thank you very much, and I certainly would appreciate any answers you could give.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Good, regarding answers this public comment. And we do, however, have your telephone number that you called in on. If it's okay, we can have someone call you back, or if you send us an email, we will respond that way.
Well, this is Commissioner Hernandez. I would like to hear the answer to Ms. Good's questions. If someone from the board can quickly provide.
Madam Chair, this is Adam Lasker. I think I could very quickly address Ms. Good's questions. First of all, with the postmark issue, postmark is only relevant when it's deposited into the mail system. And when it's deposited into the mail system, U.S. Postal Service system, it must be deposited no later than Election Day. And with the drop boxes, however, they must be deposited prior to when the polls close on Election Day, because when the early voting sites, which are allowed under statute now to be open on Election Day, when they close, that's the end of the drop boxes. But anything that is received timely into a drop box will be accepted by the board as timely provided to the board. Anything that is postmarked by the post office on or before Election Day will also be received as timely, again, so long as we receive them from the post office within 14 days after the election. When it comes to the drop boxes, those ballots are brought not to the warehouse but to the central count location, which is our downtown offices. The security for those drop boxes, as mentioned, is that there will be a board employee monitoring them at all times. There will be chain of custody logs kept at all times. A lot of this is still being determined as to how it's going to work out, but we're hoping to have judges accompany the employee when they bring the ballots back to the office. By all means, custody logs will be kept. And then, of course, when those ballots are actually processed, they must be affirmed by the panel of 3 election judges as part of the new legislation. So that's an observation process by the election judges, which is also open to poll watchers. So that's the question about who observes. Thank you.
Thank you, General Counsel Lasker. Moving on with public comment, the next on the list is Don Olson. Don, you are now on the line. You did not list an organization that you're affiliated with. Are you affiliated with someone?
I always speak as a citizen at large.
Okay, then I recognize citizen at large Don Olson. Begin when you're ready, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have a few questions and a few comments, so I will just get right into it. There's still some confusion about that timestamp on the drop boxes, whether an individual is going to be sitting next to the drop box whose timestamps, or if my original feeling or understanding, as Lance Gough described it, was there's going to be something sitting on top of the drop box that actually timestamps it as the ballot is put in. So I'm a little confused about that.
Mr. Olson, do you have anything else? And then afterward,
yes.
If there's time remaining, we'll get a response.
Yes, I do. The next thing is, I would just like to know what machines you're using to count the mail-in ballots. I believe the old machines were called 400C machines. Are you still using those, or do you have new machines to do that? That's my second question. And third question, I'm still concerned about the chain of custody for the early voting ballots, especially now that there will also be mail-in ballots being transferred from the early voting sites. It seems to me in March we had just one person, and it was the investigators doing that. I think it's only appropriate for 2 people to do that according to the traditions of a legitimate election. So I'm wondering if you've considered that 2 that transfer. Then finally, I just wanted to say something about a question I brought up before but never got a response to, was whether or not results tapes will be available at the early voting sites on Election Day. And I feel that because the early voting sites turn into election day voting sites, that they should have to follow the rules of election day voting sites, and they should have to produce a results tape for poll watchers at the polling place. And that was definitely not clear in March. Some early voting sites that became election day sites did produce a tape for the poll watchers, and some did not. So that has to be clarified. And, the election coordinators especially, and the election judges at those sites need to know what the correct answer is. And I just want to say, something that has always bothered me about early voting is that it violated one of the basic principles of a sound, fair, legitimate election, and that is that the votes should be counted in the polling place. Now, the votes were always counted, but no poll watchers were ever given results with early voting. So now we have the opportunity to do that. I think we absolutely should do that, because that is the only accountability for what happened in those early voting sites. So I absolutely think that results tapes should be made available to poll watchers in those early voting turned election day voting sites. And one more thing, Adam Lasker just answered my question. He said that poll watchers could be available at the signature verification for the mail-in ballots. And I think that's great. I think that absolutely has to happen. And poll watchers do not need to be able to challenge those signatures the way they do on election day, because the election judges are voting on every ballot signature. It's as if the poll watcher has already challenged them all. So poll watchers just need to be there to watch and make sure that everything's being done appropriately. And actually that should have been included in SB 1863, but sadly, the word poll watcher never appeared in that entire bill, which I think was a sad oversight. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I was just about to say 30 seconds on you, Mr. Olson. I think Lance Gough, did you want to respond to the timestamp?
We will have an individual person stationed at every early voting site. When the voter comes to bring their ballot in, it'll be time-stamped and dropped into the ballot box, or the early voting box. I mean ballot box.
The drop box.
The drop box, yes.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Next on my list is Laura Chamberlain, Clean Cook County. Ms. Chamberlain, are you on the line?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. You can begin when you are ready.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of the work that the board is doing, and also thank you for the public comments. They've been really interesting. We definitely concur with the League of Women Voters that we would like the procedures for the signature verification to be finalized, and we'd like a copy of that as well when you finally get those. We're concerned, as Mr. Olson has said, the poll watchers being there is great. We're just really concerned with how you're going to handle objections to a signature within the three-person team. Who is making up these three-people team? We know that the two of them are to be from one party and one from the other. Who's appointing them? Who's nominating these signature verification teams? We also have people that would like to apply to be on these signature verification teams. So we're as concerned as the League of Women Voters about all of the procedures. I definitely agree with, excuse me for 1 second, let me just write, and 3. Okay, yeah, I concur with Mr. Olson about the clarification of the results tapes from the extended early voting sites. I was not aware in SB 1863 that those extended early voting sites were actually ensconced in some legal language. I'll have to go back and read the bill again. But we definitely are, we think it's really unclear on election day whether you can get a results tape from one of those extended early voting sites or not. And we would encourage you to allow the tape to be obtained, because that's going to be really difficult for poll watchers. Are they in an extended early voting site or are they on an election day site? Who can tell? Especially in March, it seems like the lines between those two were really drawn very quickly. So we would encourage that. We also would really encourage the board to think about posting the results of the election on the Chicago Chicago election site by, what's happening right now, which is the total votes, broken down by race and by districts and precincts, but also by type of voting. So all the vote by mail results in a precinct for a certain race, all the early voting results, and all the election day voting, besides the total. That's going to really allow campaigns and election integrity specialists to really be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So we really encourage that just a reporting, decision on your part. It probably wouldn't take very much for your computer experts at the board to figure out how to do that, and it would be really, really helpful for the citizens to be able to look at that kind of transparency for the results. The second thing that we're really concerned about is the 5% retabulation, and that is, we kind of thought about this, and we thought that, we know that these vote by mail ballots are going to be large batched and put into these large central counters. We're also unclear what central counters you're using now, whether you're using the old 400Cs or if you bought something new. So we would like an answer to that question. And they're large batching this. They're taking a big batch of vote by mail. They're putting them in these large counters. And you want to run a 5%, or we would like you to run a 5% retabulation on these ballots. So it makes sense to us that with every large batch, that you would pick from random from that batch, and there's all sorts of ways to randomize a pick from a large batch of ballots. I'm sure Mr. Gough knows all of those ways. And so we'd pick from random 5% of those ballots, and then they would put through a different screener, probably a precinct level scanner, immediately to just check the machine tabulation on the large central counters. And I've written this up for Mr. Allen. He can share it with you. It would be an immediate check on the large central counters machine tally. And we would really appreciate you considering that sort of, 5% retabulation of the vote by mail ballots. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. And now the last person listed here for public comment is, there's the timer, is the other Claire with Illinois Ballot Integrity, Claire Gordon. Claire Gordon, let's see, we have to unmute your microphone here. Let's see, I've got you, let's see, how do we, would the person in charge of unmuting, there we go, Claire Gordon, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
And we can hear you. You again, like everyone else, have 5 minutes and begin when you're ready.
Yes, I have a few questions. First one, I want to ask, if you could answer any of these today, that would be great. I would be grateful. There's a lot of great questions that have been asked today by the various callers. Can you, on your website, please post the questions and answers? Is there a way this can be done so that we can refer back to them? Second, as far as early voting sites, historically it's just been electronic voting. You cannot get a paper ballot. You can get one, obviously, when you vote by mail, or you can get one when you go in person. You can request a paper ballot. Is this going to change at the early voting sites? I think the majority of people who go to early voting sites go to their own neighborhood. And of course, allowed to vote at any early voting site anywhere. And I want to know what you might do about paper ballots. I heard Dominion might have a machine vote on demand, a special machine that could print ballots for people that are out of, from different areas of Chicago. Please comment about that, if you could. And the last question is if you could go into a little more detail about the PPE equipment for the judges. Will there be sneeze guards? Will there be, in addition to masks, what other equipment will you have, and will you be having anything for the people coming to vote? Okay, any of those that you could answer today would be appreciated so we can all hear. One of the things I would also like when you get back to other people with the questions, I actually want to hear the answers to all the questions, and all I can hear is that you're getting back to the individual person who's asking the question. So how do we all get to hear the answers to all the questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Mr. Gough, did you want to respond to any of that?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, we were disconnected for a few minutes, so we did not hear those questions. So
okay.
Jim Allen got those.
Jim, did you get those questions? Are you prepared to respond?
Certainly.
If not, okay.
The early voting locations by design are universal vote centers. So that means that any voter from anywhere in the jurisdiction, in this case the city of Chicago, may use any location. So if they're running errands, if they're going to work or coming from work, or visiting someone, some other neighborhood, or if they simply want to go to an early voting location that might have less traffic, they can use that. The challenge that we have not been able to overcome with providing paper ballots, as you suggested, is that particularly with this election, we will have we will have 2 paper ballots, first off, and between them we will have more than 3,800, I believe 2,800 variations based on the precinct and ward first, but also splits within each precinct if there are 2 parts of that precinct in separate congressional districts or state senate districts or state representative districts. So the ballot security issues involved in trying, as well as ballot anticipation issues, in trying to offer a library of thousands of varieties of ballots and being able to get the correct ballot is the first challenge. The next is that it's not only 2,800 versions of the ballots, but also the touchscreen is the only way to provide all of the translations so that no matter where a voter shows up, they can get access the ballot in English, Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, Polish, Tagalog, or Korean. Thirdly, we have to offer those 2,800 versions in all those languages in an audio component to assist visually impaired or blind voters. So those are the challenges that you face with an early voting universal vote center and trying to offer paper ballots. So paper ballots will be provided to voters in the precinct. Paper ballots definitely will be provided to vote by mail voters. Next year, a question on PPE. The board has stockpiled masks, gloves, disinfectant materials, as well as plexiglass shields to protect our poll workers on Election Day.
Oops, and there's the timer. Hey, Jim, you came in right under at the limit. Thank you, everyone, for your public comments. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda is executive session. General Counsel Lasker, is there a need for executive session?
Thank you, Commissioner. There is no need today. There is one matter that I would just like to very quickly address. We had announced at our last meeting that we were going to make an announcement on an executive director candidate, and we're deciding to postpone that to a future meeting date, probably the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lasker. There being nothing else on the agenda, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn until our next regularly scheduled meeting. Do I hear such a motion?
So move, Commissioner Hernandez.
Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Swain.
Very good. Have the motion being moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Commissioner Hernandez says aye.
Commissioner Swain votes aye.
The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion passes, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the board meeting of August 12th, 2020 has adjourned. We thank you for participating, and we ask that you disconnect your lines.